"Don't defy me," Christopher Lang snarled, his hand cracking across Yolanda Price's cheek. The restaurant fell silent as Yolanda, 33, African-American, and 6 months pregnant, clutched her face, dark eyes blazing with hurt yet defiance. 60 diners froze, phones snapping up to record. Marcus Price, her brother, ex-SWAT and head chef, stormed forward, brown eyes burning with rage. "You dare touch my sister?" he roared, stance poised for battle. The air crackled with tension. Videos spread like wildfire, igniting public outrage and thrusting Christopher, a white billionaire, into a storm of condemnation. Would Yolanda find justice against his power? Could Marcus protect her from his wrath? What secrets would unravel in this clash of loyalty and betrayal? Predict. Will Yolanda triumph, or will wealth shield Christopher? Vote 1, great, or 0, not great. The hum of crystal clinking and murmured conversations filled the opulent restaurant, where chandeliers cast golden light over white linen tables. The air was thick with the scent of seared steak and ambition, a haven for the elite. Yolanda Price sat rigid, her hands folded over her swollen belly, 6 months heavy with her unborn daughter. Her dark eyes, sharp with a quiet strength, flickered with unease as she faced her husband, Christopher Lang. At 41, the white billionaire carried himself like a king, his tailored presence commanding every glance in the room. But beneath his polished exterior, a storm brewed, one Yolanda had learned to dread over 5 years of marriage. "You're embarrassing me," Christopher hissed, his voice low, venomous, barely audible over the clatter of silverware. His blue eyes narrowed, cutting into her like glass. Yolanda's heart pounded, her daughter's gentle kicks a reminder of what she fought for. She'd only asked to skip tonight's gala, citing her doctor's warning about stress and her pregnancy. The words had slipped out, soft but firm, a rare spark of defiance against his relentless control. "I need to rest, Chris. The baby." Her sentence died as his hand flashed across the table, a sharp crack silencing the room. Pain seared her cheek, a hot sting that blurred her vision. She clutched her face, fingers trembling, but refused to let tears fall. 60 pairs of eyes turned, forks frozen midair, as the elite gawked in stunned silence. Yolanda's chest tightened, shame warring with a fire she hadn't felt in years. Her daughter kicked harder, as if urging her to stand tall. She straightened, meeting Christopher's gaze, her defiance a quiet rebellion against his tyranny. "You'll learn your place," Christopher said, his tone icy, as if the slap were a mere correction. He leaned back, adjusting his cufflinks, oblivious to the phones now angled toward them, capturing his cruelty in high definition. The diner's whispers grew, a low buzz of shock and judgment. Yolanda's pulse raced, not from fear but from a buried strength stirring within. She wasn't just his wife, not just a vessel for his heir. She was Yolanda Price, and she would not break. From the kitchen's edge, a figure emerged, moving with lethal precision. Marcus Price, Yolanda's older brother, 36 and a former SWAT officer turned chef, cut through the dining room like a blade. His brown eyes burned with a rage so controlled it was almost serene, a storm held in check by years of discipline. The clatter of pots behind him faded as he locked onto Christopher, his broad frame tense, ready to act. "You dare touch my sister?" he growled, voice low, but carrying the weight of a man who'd faced down death and won. The room held its breath, the air electric with impending conflict. Christopher smirked, unfazed, his arrogance a shield. "Stay out of this, Price. This is between me and my wife." His words dripped with ownership, as if Yolanda were a possession to be managed. Marcus stepped closer, his stance a silent promise of consequences. Yolanda's heart swelled at her brother's presence, a lifeline in a sea of humiliation. She remembered their childhood in South LA, Marcus shielding her from bullies, teaching her to ride a bike, always her protector. Now he stood between her and the man who'd caged her spirit. Yolanda's voice, though soft, cut through the tension. "It's not just between us when you hit me in front of everyone." Her words hung heavy, each syllable a reclaiming of her dignity. The diner's phones kept rolling, their lenses catching her resolve. the crack in Christopher's facade. His jaw tightened, a flicker of unease betraying his control. He wasn't used to resistance, not from her, not from anyone. But Yolanda felt something shift inside, a spark of the woman she'd been before his wealth and words had dimmed her light. A woman's voice sliced through the standoff. "Mr. Lang, step back. I witnessed an assault." Aisha Brooks, a 39-year-old black LAPD detective, rose from a nearby table, her badge gleaming under the soft light. Her sharp eyes, hardened by years of seeing humanity's worst, fixed on Christopher. She moved with authority, her presence a quiet command that shifted the room's balance. Christopher hesitated, his arrogance faltering under her scrutiny. "This is a private matter," he snapped, but his voice lacked its earlier bite. Aisha's gaze didn't waver. "Not when it's public violence." She turned to Yolanda, her tone softening. "Mrs. Price, you're safe now. Let's talk." Yolanda nodded, her throat tight with gratitude. Marcus remained rooted, a sentinel between her and Christopher, his fists clenched but still. The diner's murmurs grew louder, their videos already spreading beyond the restaurant's walls, fueling a growing storm of public outrage. Christopher's empire, built on power and privilege, was beginning to crack under the weight of his own actions. Yolanda's mind raced, replaying the years of Christopher's control, his subtle insults, his isolation of her from friends, his mockery of her South LA roots. Each jab had chipped away at her, but tonight, something broke free. Her daughter's kicks pulsed against her palm, a reminder of why she couldn't stay silent. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. Marcus's presence, Aisha's intervention, they were anchors pulling her back to the woman she'd buried under Christopher's shadow. Christopher leaned forward, his voice a low threat. "You'll regret this, Yolanda." But she met his gaze, unflinching, her dark eyes a mirror of defiance. "No, Chris, you will." The words were quiet but carried the weight of a vow. Marcus's eyes flicked to her, a flash of pride breaking through his rage. Aisha gestured toward a quieter corner, and Yolanda followed, her steps steady despite the ache in her cheek. The diners watched, their phones still raised, capturing a moment that would haunt Christopher long after the night ended. Marcus stayed close, his gaze never leaving Christopher, who stood alone now, his control slipping like sand through his fingers. The billionaire's face was a mask of calculation, already spinning ways to salvage his reputation. But Yolanda felt a fire kindling within, one that no amount of wealth could extinguish. She was no longer just his wife. She was Yolanda Price, sister, mother-to-be, and a woman ready to reclaim her voice. As Aisha led her away, Yolanda glanced back at Marcus, their bond unspoken but unbreakable. The restaurant's opulence faded into the background, irrelevant against the weight of what had just begun. The videos would spread, the public would judge, and Christopher would face a reckoning. But for Yolanda, this was more than a scandal. It was the start of her fight, not just for justice, but for the future her daughter deserved. The restaurant's golden glow faded as Aisha Brooks led Yolanda Price to a quiet corner, the hum of shocked diners trailing behind them. Yolanda's cheek still burned from Christopher Lang's slap, but it was the weight of her own words. "It's not just between us," that pulsed through her, a defiant spark reigniting a fire she'd long suppressed. Her dark eyes, sharp with resolve, flickered with fear as she felt her unborn daughter kick, a tiny rebellion mirroring her own. At 33, Yolanda had spent 5 years under Christopher's control, his wealth a gilded cage, his words carving away her sense of self. Tonight she dared to speak, and the cost was etched in the sting on her face. Marcus Price remained a sentinel near the table where Christopher stood, his billionaire composure fraying. Marcus's brown eyes held a storm, years of SWAT training channeling his rage into a coiled, lethal calm. At 36, he'd faced armed threats in darkened alleys, but nothing cut deeper than seeing his sister hurt. His fists clenched, itching to act, but he held back, knowing one wrong move could give Christopher's lawyers an edge. "You're not untouchable, Lang," he said, voice low, each word a warning. Christopher's blue eyes narrowed, a smirk curling his lips. "You're out of your depth, Price. She's my wife, my property." Yolanda's breath caught at the word property, a dagger to her heart. She'd heard it before, whispered in private moments when Christopher mocked her South LA roots, calling her a charity case he'd elevated. Each insult had chipped away at her, but now, with Aisha's steady presence beside her, she felt a flicker of strength. "I'm not yours to own," she said, her voice soft but unyielding, carrying across the room. The diners, still clutching their phones, leaned closer, their recordings capturing a woman reclaiming her voice. Christopher's smirk faltered, his control slipping under the weight of her defiance. Aisha, her badge of quiet authority, kept her gaze on Yolanda. "You don't have to stay silent," she said, her tone warm but firm, a lifeline from one black woman to another. At 39, Aisha had seen too many victims shrink under power like Christopher's, but Yolanda's eyes held a fire she recognized, a refusal to break. "Tell me what happened," Aisha urged, her notebook ready. Yolanda hesitated, her mind flashing to years of Christopher's rules. No friends, no family visits, no speaking unless spoken to. But the kick of her daughter, Maya, grounded her. "He hit me because I asked to rest," she said, voice trembling but clear. "He can't stand me standing up to him." Across the room, Christopher's face darkened, his fingers twitching toward his phone, no doubt summoning his sister, Evelyn Lang, the lawyer who'd cleaned up his messes for years. "This is a misunderstanding," he said loudly, addressing the diners as if they were his boardroom. "My wife's emotional, pregnant. You know how it is." The lie was smooth, but the diners' murmurs grew hostile, their videos already spreading beyond the restaurant's walls, fueling a public outcry. Marcus stepped closer, his voice a low growl. "Call it what it is, Lang. Assault." The word hung heavy, a truth Christopher couldn't spin. Yolanda's mother, Yolanda Price, burst through the restaurant's doors, her 60-year-old frame moving with the urgency of a retired South LA teacher who'd raised 2 children through grit and love. Her eyes, sharp with maternal instinct, found Yolanda instantly. "Baby, what did he do?" she cried, rushing to her daughter's side. Lorraine's hands, calloused from years of grading papers and holding her children through storms, cupped Yolanda's face, searching for answers. The sight of her mother broke something in Yolanda, a dam of shame and silence. "He hit me, Mama," she whispered, tears spilling. "I just wanted to protect Maya." Lorraine's face hardened, her warmth giving way to a fierce protectiveness. "You're not alone anymore," she said, voice steady as steel. She turned to Christopher, eyes blazing. "You think money makes you a man? You're nothing but a coward." Christopher scoffed, but his confidence wavered under Lorraine's unflinching gaze. The diners, still recording, murmured agreement, their judgment a growing tide. Marcus moved to stand beside Lorraine, forming a wall between Yolanda and her abuser. "You've got one chance to walk away, Lang," he said, his SWAT-honed instincts ready to escalate if needed. Aisha's pen scratched across her notebook, documenting every detail. "Mrs. Price, I'm filing a report," she said. "This isn't going away." Yolanda nodded, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and relief. She'd spent years hiding bruises, making excuses, believing Christopher's lies that her South LA upbringing made her less. But now, with Marcus's rage, Lorraine's strength, and Aisha's resolve, she felt the cage cracking. "I don't want him near me," she said, voice stronger now. "Not me, not my daughter." Christopher's phone buzzed, and he glanced at it, his expression shifting to calculation. "You'll pay for this," he muttered, eyes flicking between Yolanda and Marcus. But the threat felt hollow, drowned by the diners' growing whispers and the weight of their recordings. Evelyn Lang would arrive soon, her legal prowess a shield for her brother, but Yolanda sensed a shift. The public's outrage, fueled by those videos, was a force even Christopher's wealth couldn't silence. Marcus's eyes never left Christopher, his body a taut wire, ready to snap. He remembered nights in South LA, teaching Yolanda to stand tall against those who'd mocked her dreams. Now he'd failed to protect her from a man who saw her as property. The guilt gnawed at him, but her defiance fueled his resolve. "You're done hurting her," he said, voice low, a promise carved in stone. Lorraine squeezed Yolanda's hand, her touch a reminder of home, of roots that Christopher could never uproot. Yolanda's gaze met her brother's, a silent vow passing between them. She wasn't just a victim, she was a sister, a daughter, a mother-to-be. The pain in her cheek faded against the fire in her chest, a determination to fight for Maya, for herself. Aisha's steady presence anchored her, a reminder that justice was possible, even against a billionaire's power. As the diner's phones kept rolling, Yolanda felt the world watching, not just judging Christopher, but witnessing her stand. This was no longer just her pain, it was a battle, and she was ready to fight. The sterile hum of Cedars-Sinai's emergency ward enveloped Yolanda Price as she lay on a gurney, the cold bite of the fetal monitor's straps pressing against her swollen belly. Her dark eyes, still stinging with the echo of Christopher Lang's slap, darted to the erratic beeps signaling her unborn daughter's distress. At 33, Yolanda had endured 5 years of her husband's control, his wealth a chain that bound her spirit. But now with each kick from Maya, she felt a fierce resolve, a mother's vow to protect, no matter the cost. The pain in her cheek was nothing compared to the terror gripping her heart. What if her defiance had endangered her child? Dr. Amara Singh, a 37-year-old obstetrician with a calm born of countless crises, studied the monitor with a furrowed brow. "Your blood pressure is spiking, Yolanda," she said, her voice steady but urgent. "Preeclampsia is a risk. Stress could trigger preterm labor." Yolanda's breath caught, guilt flooding her. She'd only wanted to shield Maya, to carve out a moment of rest from Christopher's relentless demands. His words, "You're not worthy of my world," rang in her ears, each syllable a reminder of the South LA roots he mocked. She clutched the gurney's rail, whispering, "I'm sorry, baby girl. I should have fought sooner." Lorraine Price sat beside her, her 60-year-old hands worn from years as a South LA teacher, gripping Yolanda's with unyielding strength. Her eyes, sharp with maternal fury, softened as she met her daughter's gaze. "This isn't your fault, sweetheart," Lorraine said, her voice a lifeline through the storm. "You're stronger than his lies. Always have been." Yolanda's tears spilled, the weight of her mother's words cracking the shame Christopher had built around her heart. She remembered Lorraine's lessons from childhood. Stand tall, no matter who tries to push you down. Now with Maya's life at stake, those words burned brighter than ever. Across the room, Marcus Price stood by the door, his broad frame taut with a rage he barely contained. His brown eyes, honed by years in SWAT, scanned the hallway for any sign of Christopher or his allies. At 36, he'd faced gunfire and betrayal, but nothing compared to the guilt gnawing at him now. He'd seen the signs, Christopher's subtle cruelties, Yolanda's fading spark, but he'd trusted her silence meant she was okay. "I failed you, sis," he murmured, too low for her to hear, his fists clenching as he vowed to make it right. The door swung open, and Christopher strode in, his billionaire poise intact despite the hospital's stark reality. His blue eyes glinted with calculation, as if he could spin this crisis like a boardroom deal. "Yolanda, we need to talk," he said, voice smooth but edged with threat. "This doesn't have to escalate." Lorraine shot to her feet, her maternal fire blazing. "You don't get to speak to her," she snapped, stepping between them. "You put her here, you coward!" Christopher's smirk flickered, unaccustomed to defiance from anyone but Yolanda. Yolanda's heart raced, Maya's kicks a frantic rhythm against her fear. She wanted to shrink, to hide as she had for years, but Lorraine's strength anchored her. "You don't control me anymore," she said, voice trembling but resolute. Christopher's jaw tightened, his control slipping. "You're making a mistake," he hissed, leaning closer, only to freeze as Marcus stepped forward, his SWAT-honed presence a silent warning. "One more step, Lang," Marcus growled, "and you'll regret it." Dr. Singh intervened, her authority cutting through the tension. "Mr. Lang, leave now. My patient needs a stress-free environment." Her eyes, sharp with professional resolve, met his without flinching. Christopher hesitated, his arrogance no match for the doctor's command. He turned to Yolanda, his voice low. "This isn't over." But Yolanda met his gaze, her dark eyes unflinching. "It is for me," she said, each word a brick in the wall she was building against him. Aisha Brooks entered, her badge a quiet symbol of justice. "I've got witness statements and video evidence," she said, her tone calm but unyielding. "At 39, The black detective had seen too many abusers like Christopher wield power to escape consequences. "You're looking at assault charges, Mr. Lang." Christopher's face paled, but he masked it with a scoff. "My lawyers will handle this," he said, already reaching for his phone, no doubt calling Evelyn Lang, his sister and legal fixer. Marcus's phone buzzed, a text from Jamal Tate, his SWAT teammate of 35, known for his sharpshooter precision and quick grin. "Lang's people are digging into your record. Heard he's got mercenaries on payroll." Marcus's jaw clenched, his guilt morphing into a cold, tactical focus. He'd failed to protect Yolanda once, but not again. "Stay away from her," he told Christopher, his voice ablade, "or you'll see what I'm capable of." Lorraine squeezed Yolanda's hand, her touch a reminder of South LA nights when they'd faced hardship together. "You're not alone, baby," she whispered. Yolanda nodded, tears falling, but resolve hardening. She'd hidden bruises, swallowed insults, believing Christopher's lies that her roots made her less. But now with Lorraine's love, Marcus's fury, and Aisha's justice, she felt a fire growing. Maya's kicks pulsed stronger, as if echoing her mother's awakening. Christopher lingered at the door, his eyes flicking between Yolanda and Marcus, calculating his next move. He was a man who thrived on control, but the hospital room was no boardroom, and Yolanda was no longer his to command. "You'll regret this," he said, his voice a low threat, but it lacked the power it once held. He stormed out, leaving a silence heavy with promise of justice, of reckoning, of a fight just beginning. Yolanda leaned back, the monitor's beeps steadying slightly as Maya's heartbeat calmed. She looked at Lorraine, then Marcus, their presence a shield against the world Christopher had tried to break her with. The pain in her cheek, the fear in her heart, they were real, but so was her strength. She wasn't just a wife, a victim, or a South LA girl made small by a billionaire's scorn. She was Yolanda Price, mother, sister, daughter, and she would fight for her daughter's future, no matter what came next. The sterile hum of Cedars-Sinai's emergency ward lingered in Yolanda Price's ears as she lay still. The fetal monitor's steady beeps a fragile lifeline to her unborn daughter, Maya. At 33, Yolanda's heart was a battlefield. Guilt for staying silent under Christopher Lang's control clashed with a fierce resolve to protect her child. Her dark eyes, still raw from tears, traced the ceiling tiles, each one a reminder of the cage she'd lived in for 5 years. Christopher's words, "You're not worthy," echoed, his mockery of her South LA roots a wound that festered. But Lorraine Price's hand, calloused from years as a teacher, gripped hers, anchoring her. "You're enough, baby," Lorraine whispered, her 60-year-old voice a blend of love and steel. Yolanda clung to that, Maya's gentle kicks urging her to fight. Across town in a dimly lit office, thick with the scent of polished wood and cigar smoke, Christopher Lang paced, his billionaire facade cracking. At 41, his pale face was taut with fury, blue eyes glinting like a predator cornered. The videos of his slap had spread, a tidal wave of public outrage he couldn't buy off. His sister, Evelyn Lang, 44, sat at a mahogany desk, her lawyer's composure strained. "We can contain this," she said, voice clipped but unsteady. "Judge Navarro owes us. He'll suppress the evidence." But her mind flashed to a college party years ago, where Christopher's rage left a girl bruised. She'd buried it for the family. Now Yolanda's face, marked by his hand, haunted her. "Contain it?" Christopher snapped. "She's making me a pariah. That's South LA. Nobody thinks she can ruin me." Evelyn's fingers tightened around her pen, her loyalty to her brother warring with a growing unease. "She's not a nobody, Chris. She's your wife, pregnant with your child." Her words were sharp, a rare challenge. Christopher's smirk was cold. "She's a liability. Her and that brother of hers." Evelyn's heart sank, remembering Yolanda's defiance in the hospital, a mirror to the girl she'd failed before. She wanted to believe Christopher could be saved, but his venom was a poison she could no longer ignore. In a gritty Venice Beach loft, Marcus Price gathered with his old SWAT team, the air heavy with the tang of coffee and determination. At 36, Marcus's brown eyes burned with guilt. He'd missed the signs of Yolanda's suffering, believing her silence meant strength. Now his failure fueled a resolve as unyielding as his training. Jamal Tate, 35, a sharpshooter with a quick grin that hit a sniper's focus, leaned against a wall. "Lang's digging into your SWAT record," he said, voice light but eyes serious. "He's got mercenaries on payroll." Tasha Reed, 33, her face marked by a scar from a raid gone wrong, scrolled through a laptop. "He's laundering millions through shell companies," she said, her tech expertise unearthing Christopher's secrets. Malik Carter, 34, his gruff voice shaped by years in blast zones, nodded. "FBI's sniffing around. We can use this." Marcus's jaw clenched, his mind replaying Yolanda's trembling voice in the hospital. "He hit me, Mama." He'd faced death in SWAT missions, but nothing cut deeper than failing his sister. "We hit back, hard but legal," he said, his tone a vow. "Lang thinks he's untouchable. He's wrong." Tasha's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up grainy footage of mercenaries scoping Yolanda's old apartment. "These guys aren't amateurs," she warned, her scar tightening with her frown. Jamal cracked a grin. "Neither are we." Malik's gruff laugh echoed, a reminder of their shared battles. Marcus felt a flicker of hope. Their bond, forged in crisis, was a weapon Christopher couldn't match. Back at Cedars-Sinai, Lorraine sat vigil, her eyes never leaving Yolanda. She remembered raising Yolanda and Marcus in South LA, teaching them to stand tall against those who saw their roots as less. Now seeing Yolanda fight for Maya, Lorraine's heart swelled with pride and pain. "You're stronger than he knows," she said, her voice a quiet fire. Yolanda nodded, her dark eyes glistening. "I believed his lies for too long," she whispered. "That I was less because of where I came from." Maya's kicks pulsed, a rhythm of defiance. "Not anymore." Lorraine squeezed her hand, her love a shield against the world. Christopher's office was a fortress of power, but his pacing betrayed a crack in his armor. He'd built an empire on control, over deals, over people, over Yolanda. Her defiance, Marcus's rage, and the public's growing fury were threats he hadn't anticipated. "Find me leverage," he barked at Evelyn. Her past, her family, anything. Evelyn's stomach twisted. She'd cleaned up his messes before, but Yolanda's pain was a mirror to her own complicity. "This isn't just about leverage," she said, voice low. "You hit a pregnant woman." Christopher's eyes flashed. "She's my wife. I decide what's right." Yolanda lay still, the monitor's beeps steadying as Maya's heartbeat calmed. But her mind was a storm. Christopher's insults, his claim of ownership, his mockery of her South LA heritage. Each had been a weight, but now with Lorraine's love and Marcus's protection, she felt them lifting. "I'm not his property," she murmured, more to herself than to Lorraine. Her mother smiled, eyes fierce. "You never were, baby." Yolanda's resolve hardened, a fire kindled by her daughter's life within her. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for Maya, for a future free of Christopher's shadow. Marcus, in the Venice loft, studied the mercenary footage, his guilt morphing into a tactical focus. He'd trained to neutralize threats, but this was personal. "We protect Yolanda," he said, voice steady. "No matter what it takes." Tasha nodded, her scar a testament to battles won. "FBI's our best shot," she said, sending encrypted files. Jamal's grin widened. "Lang's empire's about to crumble." Malik's gruff voice cut through. "Let's make sure he feels it." Marcus's heart steadied. Their loyalty was a force Christopher couldn't break. Evelyn sat alone, her office silent, her pen still in her hand. Yolanda's face in the hospital, marked by Christopher's hand, was a ghost she couldn't shake. She protected her brother for years, believing family came first. But now doubt gnawed at her. Had she enabled a monster? Christopher's words, "South LA nobody," echoed, a reminder of the prejudice she'd ignored. Her fingers trembled, hovering over her phone. She could still fix this, still control the narrative. But Yolanda's defiance, Marcus's rage, and the public's outcry were a tide she wasn't sure she could stem. Yolanda closed her eyes. Maya's kick's a quiet promise. She saw her South LA childhood, Marcus teaching her to stand tall, Lorraine's unwavering love. Christopher had tried to erase that, to make her less. But here, in this sterile room, with her family's strength around her, she was reclaiming herself. The fight was far from over, but Yolanda Price was no longer afraid. She was ready. The sterile hum of Cedars-Sinai's maternity ward was a distant murmur as Yolanda Price lay propped on a hospital bed. The fetal monitor's rhythmic beeps a fragile tether to her unborn daughter, Maya. At 33, Yolanda's dark eyes, raw from tears, stared at the ceiling, her heart a storm of guilt and defiance. The sting of Christopher Lang's slap lingered, but it was his words, "You're not worthy," that cut deeper, echoing years of control and mockery of her South LA roots. Each beep of the monitor was a reminder of Maya's vulnerability, a call to fight not just for herself, but for the life within her. Her hands rested on her swollen belly, feeling Maya's kicks, a pulse of strength that steadied her trembling soul. Dr. Amara Singh, 37, stood by the bed, her calm a beacon in the chaos. "Your blood pressure's still high, Yolanda," she said, voice steady but urgent. "Stress could trigger preterm labor. We're doing everything to keep Maya safe." Yolanda's throat tightened, guilt flooding her. She'd stayed silent for years, believing Christopher's lies, that her heritage made her less. Now her defiance had landed her here, with Maya's life at risk. "I should have left him sooner," she whispered, tears spilling. Lorraine Price, her 60-year-old mother, gripped her hand, eyes fierce with love. "You're fighting now, baby," Lorraine said, her South LA teacher's voice a blend of warmth and steel. "That's what matters." Marcus Price stood by the window, his broad frame taut with rage. At 36, his SWAT-honed instincts screamed to act, but the hospital's sterile walls demanded restraint. His brown eyes burned with guilt. He'd missed the bruises, the fear in Yolanda's voice, believing her silence was strength. Jamal Tate's text, "Lang's got mercenaries," still echoed, a reminder that Christopher's threat was growing. Marcus clenched his fists, vowing to shield his sister no matter the cost. "He won't touch you again," he murmured more to himself than Yolanda, his voice a low growl of resolve. The door swung open, and Evelyn Lang entered, her 44-year-old frame rigid with lawyerly poise. Her pale eyes flickered with unease, the weight of protecting her brother, Christopher, clashing with the image of Yolanda's marked face. "Mrs. Price, we need to discuss your husband's rights," Evelyn said, voice clipped but faltering. Lorraine shot to her feet, maternal fury blazing. "Rights? After he hit my pregnant daughter?" she snapped, stepping forward. Marcus turned, his presence a silent threat. "Get out," he said, voice cold as steel. "Your brother's a danger." Evelyn hesitated, her mind flashing to a college party years ago, where Christopher's rage left a girl bruised. She'd buried it, as always, for family. But Yolanda's pain was different, a mirror to her own complicity. "I'm trying to help," Evelyn said, her voice softer, almost pleading. Yolanda's eyes met hers, sharp with defiance. "Help him by leaving me alone," she said, voice trembling, but unyielding. Evelyn's resolve wavered, her loyalty to Christopher cracking under the weight of truth. Aisha Brooks, the 39-year-old black LAPD detective, entered, her badge a quiet symbol of justice. "I've got something you need to hear," she said, holding a file. "Lang's got a sealed record, assault from his college days, hushed up by his family." Yolanda's breath caught, her mind spiraling to a gala at a Beverly Hills mansion, weeks ago, when she was 6 months pregnant. Christopher had stood among his elite friends, raising a glass with a cruel smile. "Meet my diversity trophy, Yolanda from South LA. She makes me look charitable," he'd said, his voice dripping with scorn. The crowd's laughter, their whispers of ghetto and out of place, had burned into her soul. She'd clutched her belly, Maya's kicks a quiet comfort, and whispered, "I'm not your trophy." Christopher's glare had promised punishment, but she'd held her ground, her dark eyes blazing. The memory ignited a fire in Yolanda. "He humiliated me, called me a trophy to his rich friends," she told Aisha, voice steady despite the tears. "I'm done hiding. I'll testify to keep Maya safe from his hate." Lorraine squeezed her hand, pride shining through her tears. "You're my warrior," she whispered. Marcus's eyes softened, his guilt easing at Yolanda's strength. "We've got you, sis," he said, voice thick with emotion. Aisha nodded, her own resolve mirroring Yolanda's. "We'll make him answer for this," she promised, her pen scratching as she noted Yolanda's words. Evelyn stood frozen, the file in Aisha's hand a blow to her carefully constructed world. She'd spent years shielding Christopher, believing his lies about control and family honor. But Yolanda's defiance, Lorraine's fury, and Aisha's evidence were a reckoning. "I didn't know about the college incident," Evelyn lied, her voice barely audible. She did know. She'd paid off the victim's family. The shame of it choked her, a crack in her loyalty. "I'll talk to him," she said, retreating, but her eyes lingered on Yolanda, a silent acknowledgement of her pain. Marcus's phone buzzed again, another text from Jamal Tate. "Mercenaries spotted near Griffith Park. Stay sharp." His heart raced, the SWAT instincts kicking in. He didn't tell Yolanda, not yet, but the threat fueled his resolve. He'd failed her once, but never again. "Lang's not getting near you," he said, voice a vow. Yolanda met his gaze, her dark eyes a mirror of his determination. "I know," she said. Maya's kicks a steady rhythm against her fear. Lorraine sat closer, her hand never leaving Yolanda's. She remembered South LA nights, teaching her children to rise above prejudice. Now Yolanda's strength was a testament to those lessons. "You're carrying our legacy," Lorraine said, voice soft but fierce. Yolanda nodded, tears falling, but resolve unbroken. Christopher had tried to make her small, to erase her roots, but here, surrounded by her family's love, she was reclaiming herself. Maya's heartbeat steadied on the monitor, a sign of hope amidst the storm. Isha closed her file, her eyes meeting Yolanda's. "You're not alone in this fight," she said, her voice a bridge between their shared experiences as Black women. Yolanda felt the weight of that truth, her fear giving way to a fire she hadn't known she possessed. Christopher's empire, his wealth, his prejudice, they were no match for the love and justice surrounding her now. She wasn't just a victim. She was Yolanda Price, mother, sister, daughter, and she would fight for her daughter's future, no matter the cost. The quiet hum of the Griffith Park safe house was a fragile shield for Yolanda Price, whose hands rested on her swollen belly, feeling the steady kicks of her unborn daughter, Maya. At 33, Yolanda's dark eyes, once clouded by shame, now burned with a fierce resolve. The memory of Christopher Lang's slap and his gala taunt, diversity trophy, still stung, but here, in this hidden refuge, she felt a spark of freedom. She whispered to Maya, "You'll grow up strong, baby, free from his hate." Each kick was a promise, a tether to a future she was determined to claim. Her heart ached with the weight of years spent under Christopher's control, his mockery of her South LA roots a constant wound. But Lorraine Price's presence, her 60-year-old mother's unwavering love, was a balm. "You're writing a new story now," Lorraine said, her voice a South LA teacher's blend of grit and warmth, eyes shining with pride. Lorraine sat beside her, hands calloused from years of guiding students, now steadying her daughter. She remembered nights in South LA, teaching Yolanda and Marcus to rise above prejudice, to hold their heads high. Seeing Yolanda's fire rekindle, Lorraine felt a surge of hope, but also fear. Christopher's threat loomed like a shadow. "He can't touch you here," she said, more to herself than Yolanda, her voice firm but laced with worry. Yolanda nodded, her resolve hardening. "I won't let him near Maya," she said, her dark eyes fierce, a mother's vow etched in every word. Across town in a Venice Beach loft, thick with the scent of coffee and steel, Marcus Price gathered with his SWAT team, his broad frame taut with purpose. At 36, his brown eyes carried the guilt of missing Yolanda's pain for years, now fueling a relentless drive to protect her. Jamal Tate, 35, leaned against a wall, his sharpshooter's grin masking a sniper's focus. "Lang's mercenaries are circling," he said, voice light but eyes sharp. Tasha Reed, 33, her face scarred from a raid, scrolled through a laptop, her tech expertise unearthing secrets. "His company's funneling millions through shell accounts. Arms deals," she said, her voice steady despite the stakes. Malik Carter, 34, His gruff voice, shaped by blast zones, nodded. FBI's closing in. We've got leverage. Marcus's jaw clenched, his guilt morphing into a tactical resolve. We use it, he said, voice low. No one threatens my sister. The loft's stark walls mirrored Marcus's focus, each piece of evidence a weapon against Christopher's empire. He remembered Yolanda as a girl, fearless in South LA's streets, now caged by a billionaire's scorn. His failure to see her pain gnawed at him, but her hospital defiance, I'll testify, was a fire he'd fan. We keep this legal, he said, eyes sweeping the team. But we hit hard. Tasha's fingers paused, her scar tightening. Got more footage. Mercenaries at Yolanda's old place. Jamal cracked his knuckles, grinning. Let's give 'em a welcome. Malik's gruff laugh rumbled. They won't know what hit 'em. Marcus felt their bond, forged in battle, a strength Christopher couldn't break. In a sleek office, Christopher Lang paced, his 41-year-old frame radiating fury. His blue eyes glinted with calculation, the public's outrage over his slap a storm he couldn't silence. His sister, Evelyn Lang, 44, sat at a desk, her lawyer's poise fraying. The videos are everywhere, she said, voice strained. Navarro can't suppress them all. Christopher's fist slammed the desk. Then find me leverage, he barked. Yolanda's past, her brother's record, anything. Evelyn's heart sank, her mind flashing to that college party where she'd buried Christopher's violence. Yolanda's hospital face, marked by his hand, was a ghost she couldn't shake. You hit a pregnant woman, Chris, she said, voice low, a rare defiance. This isn't just about leverage. Christopher's smirk was cold. She's my wife. I own her. The words, laced with his disdain for her South LA roots, made Evelyn flinch. She'd protected him for years, believing family came first, but his cruelty was a poison seeping into her conscience. You don't own people, she said, her voice barely audible, a crack in her loyalty. Christopher's eyes narrowed. Fix this, Evelyn, or you're out. She nodded, but her hands trembled, doubt gnawing at her. Yolanda's strength, Marcus's rage, they were a tide she wasn't sure she could stem. Back at Griffith Park, Lorraine watched Yolanda, her maternal instincts on high alert. She remembered South LA nights, shielding her children from those who saw their blackness as less. Now, Yolanda's fight for Maya was a mirror to that resilience. You're carrying our strength, Lorraine said, eyes glistening. Yolanda's dark eyes met hers, a silent vow. I let him make me small, she said, voice thick with regret. Not anymore. Maya's kicks pulsed, a rhythm of hope. She'll know who she is, Yolanda whispered, her resolve a fire no billionaire could douse. Marcus in the Venice loft studied Tasha's screen, the mercenary footage a stark reminder of the threat. His SWAT training kicked in, mapping strategies, but his heart was with Yolanda. He taught her to stand tall, yet missed her pain under Christopher's control. We end this, he said, voice steady. Tasha nodded, her scar a testament to battles won. FBI's got our data, she said, sending encrypted files. Jamal's grin flashed. Lang's empire's crumbling. Malik's gruff voice cut through. Let's make it personal. Marcus's eyes hardened. He'd protect Yolanda, no matter the cost. Evelyn sat alone, her office silent, her pen still. Yolanda's hospital defiance haunted her, a mirror to the college girl she'd failed. She'd built her career on protecting Christopher, but his words, South LA nobody, were a stain she couldn't wash away. Her phone buzzed, a text from an associate. Lang's planning something big. Her stomach twisted. She could still shield him, still play the game. But Yolanda's fire, Lorraine's love, Marcus's resolve, they were a truth she couldn't ignore. Her fingers hovered over her phone, a decision looming. Yolanda leaned back. Maya's kicks a quiet promise. Christopher's empire, his prejudice, his violence. They were no match for the love surrounding her. She wasn't just a wife or a victim. She was Yolanda Price, mother, sister, daughter, ready to fight for her daughter's future. Lorraine smiled, her hand warm. You're our warrior, she said. Yolanda nodded, her heart steady, ready for whatever came next. The Griffith Park safe house was a cocoon of quiet, but Yolanda Price's heart thundered as she sat on a worn couch. hands cradling her swollen belly. At 33, her dark eyes burned with a resolve forged through pain. Christopher Lang's slap, his gala taunt of diversity trophy, his years of control. Each memory was a scar, but Maya's kicks were a lifeline, urging her to fight. "You'll know your worth, baby," she whispered, voice thick with a mother's vow. Lorraine Price, 60, sat beside her, her South LA teacher's strength a steady anchor. Her eyes, sharp with maternal instinct, hid a flicker of fear. Christopher's shadow loomed large. "He can't reach you here," Lorraine said, her voice firm but trembling, as if convincing herself. Yolanda nodded, her resolve ironclad. But the weight of his threat lingered, a storm waiting to break. Across town, in a dimly lit LA cafe, the air was thick with the scent of espresso and tension. Marcus Price sat opposite Evelyn Lang, his 36-year-old frame taut with SWAT-honed precision. His brown eyes, burning with guilt for failing Yolanda, now held a predator's focus. Evelyn, 44, her lawyer's poise fraying, slid a phone across the table, her hands trembling. "Christopher's planning something," she said, voice low, haunted. "These texts, he wants to scare Yolanda into silence." Marcus's jaw clenched as he read, "Make her regret it. Whatever it takes." Evelyn's pale eyes flickered with shame, remembering a college girl she'd paid off to hide Christopher's violence. "I've covered for him too long," she whispered, her loyalty cracking. "I can't protect a monster." Marcus leaned forward, voice ablade. "You're choosing a side, Evelyn. Make it the right one." His heart pounded, guilt morphing into a fierce protectiveness. He'd missed Yolanda's pain for years, but now her hospital defiance, "I'll testify," was a fire he'd shield. Evelyn nodded, her resolve shaky but growing. "I'll testify too," she said, voice barely audible, a decision that felt like betrayal and salvation. Marcus's eyes softened, a flicker of respect breaking through his rage. "Do it for her, not me," he said, sliding the phone back. In the safe house, Lorraine's hand never left Yolanda's, her calloused fingers a reminder of South LA nights when she taught her children to stand tall against prejudice. "You're carrying our fight," she said, eyes glistening with pride. Yolanda's dark eyes met hers, tears falling but resolve unbroken. "I let him make me small," she said, voice thick with regret. "He mocked my roots, my worth. No more." Maya's kicks pulsed, a rhythm of defiance. "She'll grow up knowing she's enough," Yolanda vowed, her heart swelling with a love stronger than Christopher's hate. Marcus's phone buzzed, shattering the cafe's tension. Jamal Tate, his 35-year-old SWAT teammate, texted, "Mercenaries at Griffith Park. Now." Marcus's blood ran cold, his guilt replaced by tactical focus. "Stay sharp," he told Evelyn, standing. "You've got one shot to make this right." He sprinted out, heart racing, his mind on Yolanda. At the Venice Beach loft, his team, Jamal, the sharpshooter with a quick grin, Tasha Reed, 33, her raid scar tight as she checked tech, Malik Carter, 34, gruff-voiced demolitions expert, geared up. "4 armed guys, silenced weapons," Tasha said, her screen showing motion sensors tripping. "They're pros." Jamal cracked his knuckles. "So are we." Malik's gruff laugh rumbled. "Let's end this." Night cloaked Griffith Park as Marcus led the ambush, his SWAT instincts razor sharp. The mercenaries crept toward the safe house, shadows with lethal intent. Marcus's heart pounded, not for fear, but for Yolanda, for Maya. Tasha hacked their comms, her voice a whisper in his earpiece. "They're split, 2 north, 2 east." Jamal's warning shot pinned one mercenary, his grin fierce in the dark. Marcus lunged, tackling the leader, a blade grazing his arm, blood hot against his skin. "Tell Lang he's done," he growled, disarming him. Malik's explosives expertise kept the others at bay, a flashbang scattering them. Police sirens wailed, closing in, as the team secured the intruders. Their ties to Christopher's accounts undeniable. Yolanda, inside the safe house, clutched Lorraine's hand as the distant flashbang echoed. Her dark eyes widened, fear spiking, but Maya's kick steadied her. "He's coming for us," she whispered, voice trembling. Lorraine's grip tightened, her maternal fire blazing. Marcus won't let him, she said, voice steady. You're safe, baby. Yolanda nodded, her resolve a steel core beneath her fear. She'd faced Christopher's scorn, his violence, his empire. Now, with her family's love, she was unbreakable. Evelyn sat in her office, the silence deafening. The texts she'd given Marcus were a line she couldn't uncross, a betrayal of family that felt like freedom. Christopher's voice, "She's my wife," rang in her mind, laced with the prejudice she'd ignored. Yolanda's hospital face, Lorraine's fury, Marcus's rage, they were truths she couldn't deny. Her fingers hovered over her phone, ready to call the prosecutor. She'd protected Christopher too long, but Yolanda's strength was a mirror, showing her the cost of complicity. Marcus, arms stinging but eyes clear, stood over the subdued mercenaries, police cuffing them. His guilt was a distant ache now, replaced by a vow to protect Yolanda. Jamal clapped his shoulder, grin intact. "We got him!" Tasha's scar softened as she nodded. "Lang's next." Malik's gruff voice cut through. "He'll feel this." Marcus's heart steadied. Their bond was a fortress. Yolanda was safe for now, but Christopher's empire was crumbling, and Marcus would ensure it fell. Yolanda leaned back, Maya's kicks a quiet promise. Christopher's wealth, his prejudice, his violence. They were no match for the love surrounding her. She wasn't just a victim. She was Yolanda Price, mother, sister, daughter, ready to face whatever came next. Lorraine smiled, her hand warm. "You're our warrior," she said. Yolanda's dark eyes shone, her heart ready for the fight ahead. The soft hum of Cedars-Sinai's maternity ward cradled Yolanda Price as she held her newborn daughter, Maya, in her arms. The weight of 6 pounds, 10 ounces of miracle against her chest. At 33, Yolanda's dark eyes, once shadowed by Christopher Lang's cruelty, now shone with a fierce, unbroken love. Maya's tiny fingers curled around hers, her dark eyes mirroring her mother's resilience. The pain of Christopher's slap, his gala taunt of diversity trophy, his years of control, they were scars, but Yolanda's heart swelled with triumph. She'd fought for this moment, for Maya, for herself. "You're my everything," she whispered, voice thick with tears, each word a vow to give her daughter a world free of hate. Lorraine Price sat beside her, her 60-year-old face radiant with pride. Her hands, calloused from years as a South LA teacher, rested gently on Yolanda's shoulder. "You did it, baby," Lorraine said, her voice a blend of warmth and steel, eyes glistening. She remembered raising Yolanda and Marcus through hardship, teaching them to stand tall against those who scorned their roots. Now seeing Yolanda cradle Maya, Lorraine felt a legacy reborn, a lineage of strength, not shame. "She's our future," she murmured, her heart full, though a flicker of fear lingered for the battles they'd fought to reach this peace. Marcus Price stood by the window, his 36-year-old frame softened by the sight of his niece. His brown eyes, once burning with guilt for missing Yolanda's pain, now glowed with quiet victory. The mercenary attack, his grazed arm, the fight to protect his sister, they were worth it for this moment. "She's got your fire, sis," he said, voice thick, a rare smile breaking through his SWAT-honed stoicism. He'd faced death in raids, but nothing compared to the pride of seeing Yolanda rise. Maya's coup was a sound of hope, a reminder of why he'd fought. Across town, Christopher Lang sat in a sterile holding cell, his 41-year-old frame slumped, his billionaire arrogance shattered. His blue eyes, once glinting with control, were dull as he faced the consequences of his actions. The trial had been swift. 4 years for assault, criminal threatening, and financial fraud, fueled by Evelyn Lang's testimony and the videos that had spread like wildfire, igniting public outrage. He'd built an empire on power, mocking Yolanda's South LA roots, believing wealth could shield him. Now stripped of his throne, he felt the weight of his own choices, a man undone by his hubris. Evelyn Lang stood outside the courthouse, her 44-year-old face etched with exhaustion. Her decision to testify, to hand over Christopher's incriminating texts, had cost her. Clients had fled, her reputation tarnished. But Yolanda's hospital face, marked by her brother's hand, had been a mirror to her own complicity. She remembered the college girl she'd paid off, the tang of guilt that lingered. "I did what was right," she whispered, voice breaking, her pale eyes fixed on the horizon. She'd lost family but gained something heavier, a conscience unburdened by lies. In the maternity ward, Dr. Amara Singh, 37, checked Maya's chart, her calm, a steady presence. "She's healthy, Yolanda," she said, her voice warm. "You both are." Yolanda nodded, tears falling as she held Maya closer. The monitor's beeps, once a warning of danger, were now a song of survival. She thought of the gala, Christopher's scorn, South LA nobody, and how it had tried to break her. But here, with Maya in her arms, she was whole. "I'm enough," she murmured, voice steady, a declaration rooted in her heritage. Lorraine leaned in, her eyes tracing Maya's tiny features. "She's got your spirit," she said, pride swelling. Yolanda smiled, remembering South LA nights when Lorraine taught her to dream beyond prejudice. "She'll know where she comes from," Yolanda said, her voice a vow. South LA, strong and proud. Lorraine's hand tightened, her love a bridge across generations. "You're her legacy," she said, tears falling. Yolanda felt it, a lineage of resilience, unbroken by Christopher's hate. Marcus stepped closer, his grazed arm a badge of his fight. "She's got 3 uncles ready to teach her everything," he said, voice soft, naming his SWAT team, Jamal Tate, Tasha Reed, Malik Carter. He pictured Jamal's quick grin, Tasha's scarred resolve, and Malik's gruff strength. They'd ambushed the mercenaries, sent evidence to the FBI, and stood by him to protect Yolanda. "No one's messing with our girl," Marcus added, his smile fierce. Yolanda laughed, a sound of pure joy, the first in years. "She'll learn love, not fighting," she said, her eyes on Maya. Aisha Brooks entered, her 39-year-old frame radiating quiet authority. "The case is solid," she said, badge gleaming. "Lang's done." As a black woman, Aisha knew the weight of fighting power like Christopher's. Her eyes met Yolanda's, a shared understanding of resilience. "You gave us what we needed," she said, voice warm. Yolanda nodded, gratitude swelling. Aisha's fight for justice had been a lifeline, a reminder that she wasn't alone. In his cell, Christopher stared at the wall, the silence deafening. His empire, built on scorn and control, had crumbled. Yolanda's testimony, Evelyn's betrayal, the public's fury, they were chains he couldn't buy off. He'd mocked her roots, called her less, but she'd risen, a force he couldn't break. His hands clenched, a flicker of defiance fading against the truth. He'd lost everything. Yolanda rocked Maya, the hospital room a sanctuary. She thought of South LA, where she'd learned to stand tall, where Lorraine had taught her to dream, where Marcus had shielded her. Christopher had tried to erase that, to make her small. But now, with Maya's heartbeat against hers, she was reclaiming it all. "I'm South LA, she whispered, voice steady, "and I'm enough." Lorraine smiled, tears falling. "You always were." Marcus knelt beside her, his hand gentle on Maya's tiny head. "She'll grow up knowing that," he said, voice thick. The mercenary fight, the grazed arm, they were nothing compared to this victory. Yolanda's eyes met his, their bond unbreakable. "Thank you," she said, tears falling, "for believing in me." Marcus shook his head. "You saved yourself, sis. I just cleared the path." The room filled with a quiet joy, Maya's coo a melody of hope. Lorraine, Marcus, Aisha. They were a fortress of love, a testament to resilience. Yolanda held her daughter closer, her heart full. Christopher's empire was dust, but her family's strength was eternal. Maya would grow up free, loved and proud, a legacy forged in fire and triumph. As the echoes of Yolanda Price's triumph and Maya's first cries fade, the story of resilience, justice, and unbreakable family bonds lingers. Yolanda's stand against Christopher's cruelty, Marcus's fierce protection, and Lorraine's steadfast love have woven a tale of courage that defies power and prejudice. What did their fight stir in you? Share your thoughts. How did Yolanda's strength, Marcus's loyalty, or Evelyn's redemption resonate? Your voice matters in this journey. Thank you for walking with the Price family through their storm. Until we meet again in another story, keep fighting for what's right and hold your loved ones close.